Hello world, and we are back. My name is Kyle Fischl, and this is going to be episode 84 of my poker vlog. And today we are covering a live stream session from the Jacksonville Best Bet property. We play a 2-2 deep stack game, which plays very similar to a 1-3 game, and I have a bunch of hands to go over, so we're going to get right into it. First interesting hand. With one limp to me, I look down at 6-4 of clubs, and I raise to $14. You want to have some suited connectors and suited gappers in your raising range. So this hand's kind of more for the purpose of balance than anything else. So I raise to $14. The button calls and one limper calls as well. So we are going three ways to a flop of 9, 8, 6, 1 club. As the early position player checks in flow to me, as I have bottom pair and a backdoor flush draw, I have a very small amount of showdown value and not really a hand strong enough to bet for value. So I'm going to check this one and hopefully get to see a turn card for free. When I check, the button bets $20. And then the early position player calls. Now I think my hand functions a lot better as a check raise than a check call or just a regular continuation bet. I think it's more likely that the button's just betting because it was checked to him than he has an actual hand, as it was a raised pot pre, so there really shouldn't be too many 8s and 9s in his range. And when I check raise, I can actually have a very balanced range here. I could have all of the sets. I could have Jack 10 of diamonds. I could have just regular Jack 10, and actually a pretty wide range where I can navigate based on different turn cards. Additionally, at the time, I believe that the early position player would put a lot of pressure on the button, because to lead out on a bet and then get called and then raised and still have an opponent left to act behind you, I think it's pretty hard to continue with a lot of your holdings. At least it should be. Top two pairs, not hard at all, honestly. Either way, as played, I make it $80. And to my surprise, both players call. So definitely going to shut it down here, not going to put any more money in this pot. I clearly picked a wrong time to make a move. But when the turn is the 3 of clubs, this is a card I'm really not going to slow down on because...
Wait a minute!
So definitely going to shut it down here, not going to put any more money in this pot.
So that was a fucking lie.
As previously mentioned, I could still have all the sets here. I could have some draws, and I actually picked up a draw that would be super disguised if it hits. And my opponents really shouldn't have too strong of holdings most of the time. So when it checks to me, I bet $160. After a bit of thinking, my opponent goes all in, and I did not bet 160 to fold for about 200 more. So I make the call.
I'm watching you go down in flames, and you're bringing me with you, and I can't do anything about it.
The river does not improve us, and 8-9 offsuit, calling a raise pre-flop, will be the winner of this hand. Next hand of note. With an under the gun straddle to $4, with 3 callers, I'm on the big blind with ace-king suited of the diamond variety. Definitely going to raise this one up. I make it $28. Definitely have to size up, get a lot of the nonsense out of there. Well, 3 different opponents decide to call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop of queen 8-7 2 diamonds. Flopping a flush draw and 2 overs. Definitely time for a c-bet. I bet $60. When 2 different opponents call, it's likely that one of them has at least a pair of some variety in most circumstances. So when the turn is a board pairing 8, either one of them could theoretically have an 8. And the bad thing about this card is if I had ace, queen, aces, or kings, I would check this entire range to this board pairing 8. So with my exact hand, it's pretty tough to put out a second barrel. So I check. The cutoff decides to bet $95. I'm still not going to fold holding the nut flush draw. So I make the call. The river is the 6 of hearts. And now my opponent goes all in. It's extremely fishy as I literally only have like $250, $300 behind. This all-in's kind of saying that you have a full house or nothing. I guess the 6 is kind of bad because 9-10 specifically also got there, and that's a hand that I think would play the exact same way. And I block the ace high and king high diamonds, so he can't have like king jack of diamonds that whiffed and went for it. So although this is fishy and kind of sad based on the run out, I decided to go with a fold on this one.
I got no money.
Next hand of note. With an under the gun straddle, there is one call to me, and I'm on the small blind with pocket jacks. I raise to $27. Well, it folds to the under the gun straddler, who raises to $80. Now the graphic's a smidge off. I have about somewhere between $250 and $300 in my stack. And at this specific stack depth and my specific hand, I think that small blind versus under the gun straddling range, a jacks is a mandatory 4-bet jam. He really shouldn't have aces, kings, queens all too often. I think a lot of the time it'll be ace, king, and I'll be a slight favorite in a coin flip. So all that contributes to this jam.
You're acting like you're nervous or something.
Well, yeah, I am.
Which gets a fold out of my opponent, who was doing what I assume is a wide 3-bet bluff. Alright, only down 566. We're going to try to make this reasonable. We punted early, but we can come back from that. It's fine. A good way to come back from that is with a button straddle. There are 2 calls to me, and I'm on the button with pocket aces, the greatest hand that has helped many a men get unstuck in the world of poker. I raise to $30. +1 is the only caller, and when the flop is 9-6 deuce 2 spades, it's not a bad board, it's not a great board, it's pretty medium, I'd say. When he checks to me, I'm just going to c-bet for the same size pre-flop, $30. Any jack, any 9 will pay me off, and surprisingly my opponent raises to $100. So I raise all in pretty quickly.
Well,
the graphic does not show it, and he folds. About $130 on this hand, not 40, so that'll help you climb back a little bit. Next hand of note. This is a $10 bomb pot, so on hands like this, literally any opponent can have anything. I have ace-8 offsuit, and on an ace-queen-10 flop from very early position, I think that this is a good spot to lead out and clear a lot of the field. So top pair, pretty much no kicker, bet $40. Again, people underestimate the size that a bomb pot is. There's $80 of dead money in there, and no one actually has to have anything. So I'm definitely going to go after these hands. To my $40 bet, only the player in +2 decides to call, so I'm going to be playing out of position the rest of the hand. When the turn is the 3 of spades, definitely a spot where I'm going to continue. I think my opponent weighted towards simply a flush draw, so I'm definitely going to go relatively big on this one. Need to charge these flush draws to continue. I bet $115. I think if he had 2 pair, he probably raises because of how dynamic the board is and how many people are in the pot. He wants to get all the money in now and dissuade other flush draws or straight draws to continue. After a bit of thinking, my opponent calls. River is a 9. If my read is correct and my opponent has a flush draw, then I have the best hand, and he's not calling a bet anyway, so there's no reason to bet here. If my opponent had a weird 2 pair, he shouldn't bet too often, and if he does, I'm probably just going to side call. The 9 doesn't complete too many 2 pairs because you'd have to have queen 9 or 10 9, and to call twice with just 1 pair to river a second one seems difficult in a bomb pot specifically. So the 9 doesn't scare me too much. I check. My opponent thinks for a long time, really does not have too much behind, and I'm stuck piles, so you know I'm calling if he decides to do something fancy. But he eventually checks it back. A 10 does have a small amount of showdown value, but a pair of aces are good for this bomb pot. Next hand of note. It folds to me in the hijack. I have pocket queens. I raise to $15. Well, the cut off the button and the big blind decide to call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop of 5-5-8. Very, very safe board, honestly. Not too many people should ever have a 5 here. And additionally, 9s, 10s, jacks, maybe pocket 7s should feel pretty good on this board. Strangely enough, the big blind raises to 25. I'm not going to slow play my hand. I'm going to try to get as much money as I can in as quickly as possible. I raise to $60, and my opponents just fold. So I'm not sure you should have a lead folding range. If you're going to throw a bet out there, you should be at least willing to call a raise a lot of the time. Maybe not always, but shouldn't be lead folding too much. Well, it's been a little bit of time, and it's time for another bomb pot. $10 a player. In this particular one, I have Queen 6 offsuit, and we flop a pretty bad top pair again. On this particular board, Under the Gun bets $30. Under the Gun +1 calls the $30. And I'm sitting here, top pair, no kicker, but I do have backdoor hearts. I decide to peel one time and see if I can't turn a 6 or a heart, because I do not think top pair is good against this amount of action in a bomb pot. But either way, we're going to call one time and play in position and reevaluate on the turn. When the turn is the Jack of Hearts, this time the Under the Gun opponent checks. +1 bets 60. And as seen previously on this video, this opponent has the ability to bluff, and I put that heavily into my decision making. He bluffed with gut shots when it was checked to him, so not even giving him too much credit for actually having a hand. He could have like 7, 8, 8 of hearts. He could have like pocket 10s or pocket 9s with one heart. So I don't give this guy too much credit for having a hand yet. Either way, with the third nut flush draw and top pair, I'm not going to fold for $60 because, again, this is a bomb pot. There's $230 in there. There is quite a bit of money up for grabs, so we are definitely going to call this one. And thankfully, the Under the Gun opponent decides to fold. Even more so when the turn is the 4 of hearts. So we make the Queen High flush. Very, very happy about that. My opponent bets $120. No reason to raise here, never really getting called by worse. So we can just happily call with the Queen of Hearts and take it down. We have cut our deficit down pretty good, clawing our way back. Right now, please take a moment and subscribe. Thank you. Next hand of note. With 2 limps to me, I'm on the button with pocket aces again. Always great to get aces on the button. I raise to $16. Well, the big blind raises to 55, and it folds back to me. Pretty good spot. The dynamic of this hand's also pretty good. This is the only opponent at the table who's 3-bet me previously, and I 4-bet him last time too. So if I 4-bet again, I think he'll give me a far less amount of credit for having a hand 2 times in a row against his 3-bets. So I'm going to go about 3x his bet. I go 150, and my opponent thinks for a little bit and then makes the call. So 300 in the middle on an 8-4-5 board. I feel like my opponent's 4-bet calling range is pretty heavily 9s, 10s, jacks, queens, sometimes kings. I'm going to go for the big overbet rip and hopefully put one of these pocket pairs in a difficult position and hopefully get a crying call to get back to even. So I go all in. My opponent doesn't think too long before folding. Yeah, I suppose with his specific hand, in hindsight, a small down bet probably gets one crying call. He really didn't connect in any meaningful way, so it's tough to get value on this specific board against his specific hand. A final hand of note. With 1 limp to me, I'm in the hijack with ace-10 of hearts. I raise to $16. The big blind and the Under the Gun player decide to call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of Jack, 9, 8, 2 spades. When it checks to me, having an open-ended straight draw is definitely worth a C bet. I'll take my literal equity and just hope to hit one of my straight cards. The turn is the 3 of clubs. And when it checks to the Under the Gun opponent, he bets $35. Now, as I've said, and it's been seen previously, this opponent does have the ability to bluff, which is a big thing in poker. You can justify playing a lot looser, calling down a lot lighter, and making a lot more moves against those types of players. So I'm going to raise this one up to $90, as this opponent could have any 2 variety of flush draws. He could have clubs or spades here and not necessarily have a good hand at all. When I raise to $90, my opponent raises to $215. Definitely frustrating as I worked all night to get back to even, and now I've put myself into a horrible situation as I could have happily just called Encina River for $35. But in this particular circumstance, 125 to call, feeling like I have 8 live clean outs to beat whatever 2 pair or 1 pair he has, I decide to make the call here. I brick famously, just not even close, and my opponent decides to bet $315. No real reason to call, think, raise, anything. I whiffed. Nice hand, sir. Then he shows 10-7 offsuit, like right in front of me. He called 16 bucks pre under the gun with 10-7 offsuit. That's wild. Well, we didn't get it all back, but we are definitely not down $500 like we were in the first hand of this video. We clawed back a bit. We worked for it. Results of this stream are down $282, but not the worst showing.
Win some, lose some.
If you watched all the way to this point, thank you. I appreciate it. Please consider liking the video and hitting the subscribe button. It helps me out a great deal, and there will be more to come next week. Thank you.